We all know the scene. The gate agent announces Group 1 boarding, and suddenly every single person in Groups 2 through 9 jumps up like the airplane is about to leave without them. Welcome to the most irrational human behavior experiment happening at airports worldwide, where logical thinking goes to die and primal instincts take over. I'm obsessed with understanding why boarding an airplane turns civilized humans into anxious territorial creatures who forget basic math and personal space. Today we're diving deep into the psychology behind boarding groups, and trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at gate areas the same way again. Let's start with the most mind-boggling phenomenon. Why does literally everyone stand up when Group 1 gets called? Here's the thing. Your boarding group is printed right there on your ticket. It's not a mystery. It's not going to change. Yet the moment that first announcement hits, it's like someone yelled fire in a crowded theater. The psychology behind this is fascinating and rooted in something called social proof. When we see others standing, our brain automatically assumes they know something we don't. Maybe the gate changed. Maybe they're calling multiple groups. This uncertainty triggers our fight or flight response, making us feel like we need to be ready for action, even when that action makes zero logical sense. But there's a deeper layer here involving loss aversion. Humans hate losing more than we enjoy winning. The fear of missing out on something, anything, activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. So even though you're in Group 7, your brain screams that standing up protects you from some undefined loss, even if that loss is impossible. Now let's talk about the gate hoverers, those special individuals who position themselves strategically around the boarding area, like they're planning a military operation. These people have mastered the art of looking casual while maintaining perfect proximity to the gate agent. They're not quite in line, but they're definitely not sitting down either. Gate hovering represents a brilliant psychological compromise between following social rules and satisfying our need for control. These folks can't bring themselves to blatantly cut in line, but they also can't handle the uncertainty of their actual boarding position. So they create this middle ground where they're technically not breaking rules while positioning themselves for optimal boarding advantage. The hovering behavior also stems from what psychologists call hypervigilance. These passengers are constantly scanning for any sign that boarding has begun or changed, ready to spring into action. It's the same behavior you'd see in prey animals, watching for predators, except the predator is missing your boarding group announcement. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to the absolute chaos of overhead bin panic. The moment people step onto that plane, rational thought completely evaporates. Suddenly, everyone becomes convinced that there's a shortage of overhead space, despite the fact that planes are literally designed to accommodate standard carry-on luggage for every passenger. This panic creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. When people start hoarding overhead space near the front of the plane because they're worried about running out, they actually create the shortage they feared. Passengers boarding later find no space above their seats and have to walk forward, confirming everyone's worst fears about bin scarcity. The psychology here involves something called temporal discounting. We overvalue immediate rewards and undervalue future consequences. Grabbing the first available bin space feels immediately rewarding, even though it creates problems for other passengers and potentially delays the entire boarding process. Our brains are wired for short-term survival, not optimal airplane loading efficiency. There's also a territorial component at play. Overhead bins represent one of the few spaces on an airplane where passengers can exert some control. In a situation where you're essentially powerless, cramped into a metal tube with strangers, claiming bin space becomes a psychological victory that helps maintain some sense of agency. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The great divide between sprinters and strollers. The moment boarding begins, passengers split into two distinct categories. The sprinters treat boarding like an Olympic event, moving with urgent determination toward the gate. The strollers maintain casual dignity, often seeming almost deliberately slow. Sprinters are driven by what researchers call competitive arousal. The boarding announcement triggers their competitive instincts, turning a simple process into a race they must win. These are often the same people who speed up when another car tries to merge in traffic, or who walk faster when someone's behind them on a sidewalk. Strollers, on the other hand, are making a conscious psychological choice to reject the manufactured urgency. They understand that rushing serves no practical purpose, since everyone ends up on the same plane. Their slow pace is actually a form of resistance against social pressure, and a way to maintain psychological control over their environment. But here's the fascinating part. Both groups are responding to the same psychological triggers, just in opposite ways. Both are trying to manage anxiety and maintain control. They just choose different coping strategies. The sprinters cope through action and movement, while the strollers cope through deliberate calm and resistance. The entire boarding process essentially becomes a live psychology experiment, where airlines accidentally create conditions that trigger our most primal responses. We're dealing with uncertainty, scarcity, competition, and loss of control all at once. No wonder everyone loses their minds. Understanding these psychological triggers doesn't make them go away, but it does help explain why airports transform normal humans into anxious, irrational versions of themselves. Next time you're at a gate, watching this chaos unfold, remember you're witnessing thousands of years of human evolution colliding with modern air travel logistics. The real question isn't why we act irrationally during boarding, but how we manage to function as well as we do, given how perfectly designed the process is to trigger every anxiety response humans possess. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for supporting Flight Shorts Comedy.